From the north side of the San Francisco Bay to Singapore, welcome to Urban X Real Talk Fitness Radio with your host, business owner, lecturer, author, master trainer, Tiaja. With over 30 years of experience in the health and fitness industry, he will challenge the fitness between your ears. So prepare your mind, body, and soul for the revolution of self-care, the evolution of fit, with real talk about real people, real health, real fitness, and the real deal behind our present illness culture. Real talk every time, all the time. Get weekly insights on how to shift your thinking, emoting, eating, training, hydrating, goal setting, and resting for you, the everyday athlete.
Hey, Tom,
you can cheat your fitness, but you can't steal your health flow. It's Tuesday, 9 a.m. Let's flow.
Away, selling the vacuum.
Yeah,
And it didn't really
Charlene
make
Dill.
sense that she could have. How could she have 3 jobs and only make $10,000 a year? She must not be reporting all of her income. She's going through a 4th divorce. I am not feeling bad for this lady. I mean, I'm sorry she died, but I'm not going to blame the government of Florida and our Medicare system for an individual situation. Okay, that is the problem.
So Aaron, I'm guessing that the position that you're taking is you don't think that the government should be providing health insurance to people. Is that the bottom line here?
No, I think the government should try to get out of as much stuff as they can.
Why not?
They do not solve anything.
Aaron, why not?
They don't solve anything.
Aaron, why not?
Because the government is not a competitive organization. It takes from one group and gives to another.
So, Aaron, you're saying that health insurance should be competitive?
It should be 100% competitive.
Why?
Absolutely.
Why?
It should be a free market. A
Why?
free market like everything else.
Why?
Just like education.
Why?
Yeah, the government is not the answer. They never have been.
Aaron, why?
The government has survived the history of the world.
You don't.
The U.S. is going to survive.
Aaron, it's a very simple thing. You know, the purpose of the government, read your Constitution, was to promote the general welfare of the United States. There are some things that are part of the commons. They do serve the public good. Education and healthcare are 2 of those things, and those are areas where, when you look at every other developed country in the world, the only exception is the United States. We're the village idiots filled with people like Aaron. And every other country in the world has said, no, we're going to not only provide free education to everybody. Denmark pays students $200 a month to go to school, to go to college. We're not only going to provide national health care for everybody, but we're going to provide it with no deductibles whatsoever. That's the case in every other developed country in the world. And what do they get out of that? What do the people get out of that? What does Aaron get out of that? Lower costs, better education, an explosion. I mean, we saw this in the United States here, and after the World War II, when my dad came back from Japan on the GI Bill, went to college for 2 years, the GI Bill, for every $1 we spent on the GI Bill, sending young men to college for free, for every $1 we spent, by 1965, we had returned $7 in extra tax income to the federal government as a result of those people earning higher salaries than they would have made if they didn't have a college education. Education is an investment. Healthcare is an investment. If you have a healthy populace, we have maternal death rates, mothers dying in the United States at rates that are comparable to African countries. And I'm not talking the top of the line African countries. We have the highest maternal death rate in the developed world in the United States because we don't have a national health care system. Charlene Dill is an example of that. What don't you get about if everybody's healthy and if everybody's educated, it's better for the country?
Because people have to take personal responsibility. And people in this country can't.
Aaron, you have never taken personal responsibility. You didn't birth yourself. You didn't raise yourself. You didn't educate yourself. Personal responsibility. Don't give me this crap.
I have to get up. Every day I have to get up and deal with myself, and I never ask the government for short. They just take it from me.
Yeah, Aaron, you can't use that word on the air, so I've got to beep you out. But you never ask the government for. Oh, geez. I don't know how to get through. I don't. It just seems so obvious. Let me just recap real quickly and real cleanly. It is entirely appropriate that we have a private sector, and I don't want the government making my blue jeans. I don't want the government making my computer. I don't want the government making my car. But there are certain things that we all all of our fate hangs based on that have to do with the public good. Water, septic, electric, healthcare, education. These are the appropriate areas where, in fact, government does a better job than private industry.
Last week, we began a series called The Politics of Pre-Existing Medical Conditions. I could not have anticipated the number of responses we received, but it was very good, which prompted me to do a quick scan of the internet and see what similar ideas were being shared. So I decided to begin today's show by sharing some of the more interesting comments I found in the public comments sections. The price of treatment has to be brought down, one person said. The medical profession is paid too much. If we brought the healthcare industry back into the free market, we could cut the cost of healthcare in half and pre-existing conditions wouldn't be such a problem. Stopping the greed of insurance companies, doctors, hospitals, pharmacies, and anyone in the medical business would definitely bring down the cost. Greed is what's wrong with this world we live in. If we're going to have a totally free market system, you shouldn't force people to pay a doctor to get a prescription for medication they know they need and pay for the medication as well. They should also be able to buy that medication from anywhere to reduce the price. Many politicians are in the pockets of insurance companies. That's the problem. Another person said, we have millions of people who refuse a fellow plan of care. They must lose weight, and if they gain more, why should I have to pay for them? And then finally, regardless of the mechanism for covering pre-existing conditions, you will remove one of the primary reasons for buying medical insurance. Everyone knows, or should know, that you buy insurance to cover future events, not past events. So no rational person would think they can buy fire insurance after the fire and expect the pre-existing fire damage to be covered, or to buy a car insurance to cover a pre-existing accident. For some reason, they think pre-existing medical conditions are different. Now, I say the best for last for a reason, because I would suspect that many Americans subscribe to such logic when thinking outside the box relative to healthcare on the surface. I agree with most of the last person's talking points, but here's the problem I have. See, I agree no rational person should think it's okay to buy fire insurance after the fact. That is, that the pre-existing fire damage should be covered. Granted, that's true, but health coverage is a lot more multidimensional than that, meaning it can't be condensed into linear sound bites or 140 plus characters in a tweet, because truth can be realized in a tweet. Truth requires introspection and reflection, and social media ill affords that. Now here's my issue with what he's saying. If Americans were taught self-care from K through 12, that is proper nutrition, hydration, exercise, de-stressing techniques, etc., and America cultivated a food industry which focused on affordable choice in the foods we eat, organic versus GMOs, and by the way, there wouldn't be GMOs and food deserts wouldn't exist, and a for-profit medical industrial complex didn't exist where generalists and specialists out-earn their colleagues in other developed countries nearly 2-1, and the FDA were a consumer advocacy group and watchdog for the health and well-being of the American people, then and only then could I wholly agree with such rationale. Sadly, quickie marts populate our cities, particularly the inner cities, providing a wealth of processed sugary and fat-laden foods with little or nutritional contribution to human health. In my mind, these are the true pre-existing conditions. If an arsonist burned down my house, I would expect there to be a course of legal redress or retribution. In other words, I would expect my now pre-existing condition, that is my burned home, to be covered by the same laws that protect us from premeditated acts of vandalism and bodily harm. Welcome to Urban X Real Talk Fitness Radio, where we challenge the fitness between your ears. I'm your host, Siaja. To offer health insurance for a pre-existing condition is one thing. For the insurance companies to make it affordable is entirely another. However, under Obamacare, there's a provision called community rating. For those of you who don't know what a community rating is, it is defined as follows, where health insurance is sold at the same price to people of the same age, regardless of their health status. But that same House bill allows states to get a waiver from community ratings if they want one. So the average American is really left at square one. They have no control over the state options, nor over the price individual insurers can charge them for their insurance premiums. Somewhere in all of this debate, one would think there would have been greater accountability and forethought given to the consumer, but there isn't. Let me share a radical thought and see what you think. I would like to see the wildfires that have ravaged most of California and destroyed any semblance of air quality potentially qualify as a pre-existing condition. Now just hear me out. Anyone within the next 10 years in California with a respiratory condition should be given exemption and protected status from their state or any state waiving their community rights regardless of what state they currently reside. A medical waiver that doesn't count against any other known pre-existing condition. Now, I would sign up for that. Today will be just another day unless today you decide it won't be. It is Tuesday, November 20th, 2018. Let's flow.
What is the issue with pre-existing conditions?
Well, President Trump is clear that pre-existing conditions are going to be covered and Americans want them covered. The question is, the issue is, how are they going to be covered? How are they going to be covered? Because 5% of Americans use 50% of the health care costs. 5% use 50%.
5%.
Use 50% of the health care.
That doesn't add up.
And that means that if we cost share, Bill, that everybody pays the same premium, those premiums are going to be sky high. If we all try to reach out and cover the 5%, that's how come Obamacare is broken. That's how come premiums are so high. The MacArthur Amendment introduces another idea. Why don't we give states the option of creating high-risk pools where those with pre-existing conditions could be covered outside the general pool, and so then the overall premium for a young person, for someone that's not sick, might be lower. Here's the catch point. Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for that? The Kaiser Family Foundation has done a study on this and said high-risk pools work. They actually work, but they're underfunded. And I believe that President Trump is sending a message, and he has implied this on several occasions. Maybe more money would be sent there than before. Right now we're spending $64 billion a year to subsidize the state exchanges. What if we used half of that, $30 billion, and subsidized high-risk pools in the states that decide they want to go that way?
Would that account for coverage for pre-existing conditions?
I think it would, and it would account for America's compassion. We want to take care of our sick. The question is how. If we make a 25-year-old pay for a 60-year-old with diabetes and heart disease, they're not going to be able to afford the car they want to buy. They may not be able to afford their house.
Two questions, and you just heard what his position is in that answer on CBS. Is it okay for states to manage these pre-existing conditions?
Well, I think it is for a couple of reasons. First of all, states have traditionally been in charge of insurance markets. Since Obamacare came in, we keep talking federal government, but most of the laws applying to insurance are on a state-by-state basis. The other thing is we can create guidelines like you and I just did. Let's tell the states what to do. Here's the minimum. Everybody's got to be covered. You got to subsidize it. Take the subsidies out of the state exchanges and put them in the high-risk pools. That would work.
Very interesting. When you examine all of this now, what do you explain to patients and the public, and I know you do a lot of writing as well, how do you define the following question? What is the role of government in insurance, in healthcare?
Bill, that is the key question, and nobody's talking about that enough because government has gotten too connected to the insurer. The role of government is public health. The role of government is to say, how do we keep you out of emergency rooms? How do we pay for that? How do we cover epidemics? How do we cover vaccines? Epidemics including the opioid epidemic, by the way. But when you start getting into the weeds, making sure everybody gets a colonoscopy, making sure everybody gets a mammogram. They should. Everybody should have a mammogram and a colonoscopy. But if you cost share that and mandate that everybody pays for that instead of making the government provide that care directly, it gets very expensive. And that's why the premiums are so high, and that's why there's so few insurers willing to cover it.
Now here are my 2 cents, and feel free to keep the change. The idea that healthcare insurance is called healthcare is laughable to me. I, for one, refuse to play their neologistic game where they ascribe a new meaning to a pre-existing word like pre-existing condition. Let's call it what it is. Healthcare insurance has nothing to do with health. It is insurance against illness and disease. If it were truly about health, I suspect they would have called it something akin to healthcare assurance, not insurance. But you and I know it's all about the money and corporate greed. And in the richest country in the history of the world, we're left with little or no alternative choices. Even the drugs so many millions of Americans depend on are not subject to the same economic forces of supply and demand or the rules of competition as are all other instruments of capitalism. Why is that? Why is the pharmaceutical drug industry exempt from the same forces that govern all other industries? Well, let me share with you a classic definition of the competition proviso of capitalism and see what system you think America is ascribing to. Competition is the other vital attribute of a capitalist system. Private businesses compete to provide consumers with goods and services that are better, faster, and cheaper. The principle of competition forces businesses to maximize efficiency and offer their products at the lowest prices the market will bear, lest they get put out of business by more efficient and better priced competitors. While doing business with a particular company in a capitalist system is voluntary, in contrast, the central government in a communist system has effective monopolies in all industries. This means it has no incentive to operate efficiently or provide low prices because its customers do not have the option of looking elsewhere. Now, based on that definition, I'd say it's fair to ascertain that the American medical industry isn't living up to its capitalistic roots, aside from the obvious accumulation of capital, which is the centerpiece of all capitalist systems. Now, we get it. The driving force behind economic activity is to make a profit, and very few argue against the medical industry's right to make a profit. But when amassing profits far outpace the incentive to work harder or innovate more and produce things more efficiently, then you and your health are no longer private human rights, but instead are commodities to be traded on an open market to the highest bidder, which is why I advocate self-care over healthcare. You should not have to compete with other Americans or other countries for that matter for optimal health. Living in relative health and peace is one of the things you expect your government to oversee and provide. But when the war against cancer becomes the war against those with cancer, as is played out by the health insurers, then we have not only taken a step backwards, we have turned illness and disease into the largest, most profitable corporate merger in the history of the known world. Dear friends, I wish above all things that you prosper just as your soul prospers. You've been listening to Urban X Real Talk Fitness Radio with your host, Tiaja. If you like the content we bring each week, then follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, Snapchat, as well as all of your other favorite social media. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button or download our app at tiajae.podbean.com. And also check out my latest YouTube channel titled T's Universe and this podcast titled T's Reverse. According to all the comments I receive every week, both have been inspiring imaginations and creative protests in people all over the globe. And trust me when I say both are unlike anything you've heard before. Check out T's Universe every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's 5 or so minutes that's guaranteed to change your life. And don't forget to stop through our website at www.urbanactiveness.net, where you will find our online stores, the Urban Experience Fit Stores 1 and 2. And there you can download our unique home and gym workouts, our dietary menus, as well as purchase some outrageously bold teas and spark your own revolution of self-care. Also, check out our small library of my hand-picked, personally endorsed nutritional products. Got it? Okay, go get it. Until next week, as always, walk in health and peace.
And the best skills on your shore. As if you